party that fights.
That's some high-class content right there. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report. It's March 25th, 2025. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and on Locals. Post-game show, rubinreport.locals.com. We have a big show for you. That's three bigs. That's how big it is. But before we get to it, I was hit with a deluge of emails and comments and people in Locals and Twitter people and wherever you people are online these days about my knee yesterday. We were late on the show yesterday because I mentioned on Sunday playing basketball, crushed my knee. I heard cracks, I heard pops. It sounded like I stepped on a bag of popcorn, like it was bad. I'm still in, I would say, a fair amount of pain. I got the MRI yesterday. We don't have the results yet, but we did. I showed you on the show yesterday. It's so cool what you can do with AI now. When I walked out of the MRI, you don't get the analysis yet. That takes about 24 hours for the technician to look at it, and then they send it to your doctor. But they gave us a CD with all the images. We then took all those images. I thought it was through PS5, but I guess we have a Windows computer here somewhere. And we pumped it into Grok and to ChatGPT to analyze the images. And it did say that I have a meniscus tear. I already don't have an ACL. And it turns out I had a friend, we haven't got the results yet, but I have a friend who's an orthopedic surgeon in LA. I sent him those same images. He analyzed it, but he said, I don't have the full report, I'm just doing this on my phone. But he said, for sure, I have a meniscus tear in my left knee. ACL is gone, but it does not look at the moment like I have an MCL tear, which is the miracle thing here that I'm praying for. I'll find out later today. But if it turns out this way, I thought this is an interesting little thing we could do sort of content-wise with what we do, because I'll probably do stem cells, I'll probably do peptides, and a bunch more. This is obviously cutting-edge stuff. Some of it, if you go in some ways with stem cells, depending on how they do it, you can't do in the United States, and people go to Panama, and they go to Costa Rica and other places. But maybe we'll sort of track my adventure with this and see if I can rehabilitate myself without surgery. Now that we've got the medical portion of the show out of the way, let's dive into it. There is a scandal. This is the first, I would say, Trump administration 47 scandal that we've got so far. There was a signal chat going around with some of the higher ups, like the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and somehow an Atlantic, I guess we could say journalist or quote unquote journalist, was put into the chat as they were discussing what's going on with Yemen. Let's just dive right in. This is from the Daily Wire. A journalist known for his critical pieces on Donald Trump was inadvertently added to a national security group chat in which top Trump officials discussed airstrikes in Yemen, the White House confirmed on Monday afternoon. This appears to be an authentic message chain. We are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain, said National Security spokesman Brian Hughes. The thread is a demonstration of deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. The ongoing success of the Houthi operation demonstrates that there were no threats to troops or national security. The Atlantic editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, published a story on Monday morning alleging that he was added to a chat that included Vice President J.D. Vance, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and other members of Trump's inner circle on March 15th as the national security team deliberated launching airstrikes on the Houthis. Goldberg spent the next few days watching as Vance, Hegseth, Waltz, and others discussed the president, the airstrikes, international diplomacy, and more. In one noteworthy exchange, the account labeled J.D. Vance messaged the rest of the group. Team, I am out for the day doing an economic event in Michigan, but I think we are making a mistake. 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez, 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this, as POTUS said, to send a message. I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now, the Vance account allegedly continued. There's a further risk that if we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices, he wrote, I am willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there is a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging, work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc. Okay. So I know that was a lot of reading right there, and you saw some of the screenshots at the end. But I just want to preface all of this by saying I read as much of the thread as I think is out there. I think I don't know how much more there might be. Goldberg might be sitting on more, I suppose. But what for the most part, removing the fact that somebody was let into the thread on a Signal chat, and there's questions about whether they're supposed to communicate on Signal and everything else. But what you see in the exchange, particularly from JD, is they're actually having a debate about what we do about the Houthis, whether Europe should be more involved, whether this is sellable to the people of America, how important this is in sort of the hierarchy of what they're trying to accomplish. So the content of what they are writing about in there actually is pretty consistent with a good government, right? Like a bunch of high-level people kind of debating and having a conversation around what we should do with this particular issue. Here is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying that nobody was talking about war plans.
Question.
Can you share how your information about war plans against the Houthis in Yemen was shared with a journalist in The Atlantic? And were those details classified?
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again, to include the hoaxes of Russia, or the fine people on both sides hoax, or suckers and losers hoax. So this is the guy that peddles in garbage. This is what he does. I would love to comment on the Houthi campaign.
Why were those details shared on Signal, and how did you learn that a journalist was privy to the targets, the types of weapons used?
I've heard I was characterized. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so there's a couple of things to address real quick here. First off, yeah, Goldberg basically and The Atlantic is kind of a never Trump operation. They're what people would say are sort of rhinos, I suppose, at this point, but like they are largely against Trump. So this is not a friendly to Trump. You could also question whether he should have immediately said, hey guys, I shouldn't be in here, to whatever extent he's a journalist, if he's sitting on more stuff, how this relates to national security. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff there. But Pete, what Secretary Hegseth is laying out there, in essence, is that what you're seeing in those texts is consistent with what we've seen. Yes, we are doing airstrikes, right? Absolutely. The Houthis have been they're pirates in essence, and they've been launching rockets and everything else. We're allowed to defend trade. Now, should Europe be more involved in that? We could probably have that debate. Europe doesn't do much for themselves. It ends up leaving us as the sheriff. But okay, I thought his answer there was pretty consistent. This guy, we know he has been wrong about a bunch of stuff. Don't necessarily trust him. Okay, that's kind of where we're at with Secretary Hegseth. Here's Trump.
Your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis?
Right.
Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
Okay, I tend to actually believe Trump there that he did not know about this specifically. That's what JD is even saying in the thread. But also, I want to address two things. First off, he's right. Again, the Atlantic, it's sort of a never Trump place of journalism or whatever you want to call it. But also that the attack that we did is consistent with everything in the chat as well. So far, I don't see a major scandal here other than should they have been well, they let somebody in the chat. So, okay, so that is a mistake by somebody, and we will find out who, right? So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, should they be communicating on Signal? I don't know how else in modern times would people of the government communicate about things. Like, does the government have a secure peer-to-peer, like decentralized texting platform that they're all supposed to use? Is there something that they're supposed to use that they're not used to, that they're not using? I don't know. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that the Biden administration had all sorts of people all the way up the chain texting on iMessage and things that are way less secure than Signal. That is not not an excuse for any of it, but how else in modern times are they supposed to communicate with each other unless you tell me that the White House has some other system so they can text about things? That's just how humans communicate in 2025. Here's Scott Jennings, the all-star over on CNN, and the rest of the panel not too thrilled about this scandal. They think it's huge. He does a little cleanup.
All right, moments ago, Caitlin Collins was reporting on her show, Scott, that there is shock inside the White House that this chat was texted to Jeffrey Goldberg. Are you shocked?
Well, sure. I mean, it's a shocking thing, and they've admitted that it was a mistake and admitted that it's authentic. So they're owning up to it. I think they're still, based on what I've heard tonight, trying to figure out how it happened. I'm not sure the National Security Advisor Walls even knows Goldberg. In fact, I don't believe he knows him and has never met him. I did learn a few things in some of my conversations, if you're interested. One is that the Signal program was preloaded on a number of devices and agency computers in this circuit when they got there. So in their view, it was already in use. Number two, in some of the messages, they talk about needing to go to the high side computers, which is the classified system. So they clearly were knowing there was a line on what you could discuss in a chat like this versus classified system. Number three, there is a dispute over whether the term war plans is being exaggerated. And number four, look, I love the policy. It's well executed. You've got a thoughtful policy discussion going on. And we did what the Biden administration would not do, stop these people from harassing our shipping lanes and our boats and our Navy. So good on the Trump administration for reversing a bad policy.
So a wild triumph. And I will note that Pete Hegseth does not agree.
All right, so he's just great. Scott Jennings is just great. Have we ever sent that guy a cake or a pin, something, brooch? I don't know. Let's just quickly review, because he basically reiterated what I said, and I think it's just worth, because when you're at dinner tonight and people are freaking out about the scandal, even though we had in the previous administration a bunch of people who were only hired because of their genitals, you should be able to push back on things. So is he shocked that this guy got into the chat? Yes. That's the shocking part, for sure. Somebody, and maybe it was Mike Waltz, it's unclear if he even knew him or everything else, but somebody let him in. So there's a mistake for sure, full stop. Then the second issue, should they be using Signal? Well, there's some debate about that because it was on some of these computers and phones they were given. Then he also actually does mention that there is some other system that they're supposed to talk about hyper classified things. So again, I addressed that earlier. So there is some stuff there. The two parts that I think are most interesting, first is the policy part. He's right about the policy. It's not as if they were saying anything in the chat that is completely 180 different than the way our public policy has been. The Houthis have been, in essence, pirates taking over ships, stopping trade routes, firing rockets, and we're doing something about it. So that is very upfront. And then again, there's the part about the system itself. So did he say Highline? We'll look more into that. Can we do a little more research on that? We'll try to find out a little bit more about what system are they supposed to use. Is that an app that they have on their phone? We will find out. Caroline Leavitt, White House spokesperson, she put this up. Jeffrey Goldberg is well known for his sensationalist spin. Here are the facts about his latest story. No war plans were discussed. No classified material was sent to the thread. The White House counsel's office has provided guidance on a number of different platforms for President Trump's top officials to communicate as safely and efficiently as possible. As the NSC stated, the White House is looking into how Goldberg's number was inadvertently added to the thread. Thanks to the strong and decisive leadership of President Trump and everyone in the group, the Houthi strikes were successful and effective. Terrorists were killed, and that's what matters most to President Trump. So look, I'm really trying to do this, as I always do with everything, as honestly as I can. And if this was a Biden administration scandal, the exact same way, would I be going off on it a little bit more? Actually, the answer is probably yes. Because the Biden administration scandal, but the Biden administration was staffed not only with so many anti-American people, but people who were not qualified. So the difference here, not excusing the person being added to Signal, not excusing whether they should have used Signal at all, is that what we have seen under the hood here is a group of qualified people having rational policy debates, and then that policy that they're discussing in there being executed virtually to perfection. We didn't lose one American in bombing the Houthis. It was happening again yesterday. So whether you like bombing the Houthis or not, whether you think that the Signal, getting into Signal in the first place and adding this guy as a massive killer or not. The point is that, once again, we are in this weird place of transparency. What we just saw under the hood, whether it should have been there or not, is completely congruent with everything that's happening policy-wise. We'll have more on some of the hysteria from the left because they're really running with this story. So we're going to put a pin in that story and we'll connect this to deportations in just a sec. But first, let me talk about G-Defy. You guys know I'm all about logic and reason. Well, here's some logic. If your feet are killing you at the end of the day, you need better shoes. That's why I love G-Defy shoes by Gravity Defier. Unlike trendy sneakers, these are built on real shock-absorbing technology. Their patented VersoShock system absorbs impact, returns energy, and helps align your body so whether you're walking, running, or standing all day, it feels effortless. Right now, my listeners get 30% off orders over $120. Just text Rubin30 to 91888 or visit gdefy.com and use code Rubin30 at checkout. Use logic, choose comfort, G-Defy. We like to do a little research while we're live on air, so Joseph was checking that out. It wasn't Highline computers, it was high-side computers. That's what Scott Jennings was referencing. And the high-side computers are basically the internal system for the government that does not get out of that. So it's only computer to computer, right? So the question is, in modern times, and then we'll move on, in modern times when everyone's operating by the phone, should J.D. Vance only be able to send a message to someone when he's at one of these government computers and then someone else can only receive it when they're at government computers? It's unclear if there's an app version of this or it could be done on your phone, etc. So there's partly a technological leveling up that the government is trying to do. That's not saying that Signal's the right way to do it. Maybe it's not. And regardless, someone got added in that shouldn't have been added in. So there is something there. But I think it's worth noting that we're just in this technological adolescence where we have old systems and now we have a new way of people communicating, and those things better match up or you're going to get a lot more stuff like this. Let's talk about the deportations for a moment, because they are ongoing. Obviously, we've closed the border. Something like 96% of border crossings. There's been a drop about 96% of border crossings. Almost purely, not just because we're at the border protecting it, but because we've sent the signal out to the world, hey, you just can't come here right now. Sorry, we're dealing with some internal shit. We'll get back to you. That's pretty much where we're at. Over on CNN, I guess we call her reporter or journalist, Caitlin Polance, defended Judge Patricia Millett, who said that the Nazis got better treatment than what we're doing to the illegals right now. This is a real, if you want to bang your head on the desk, go for it right now.
Those were words, I mean, anytime someone uses the word Nazi, people's ears are going to perk up, right? And it's a very specific example in this case because it was the last time that this law was really put into practice. What did you learn at court today, and what's your read on what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, everybody did perk up when Judge Millett said that during the hearing, but she really reframed this entire discussion of the Venezuelan migrants being put on a plane and sent. There's been all this drama about the judge and the judge at the lower court and what the Justice Department and the Trump administration were doing to communicate. But this brought clarity to the law here and refocused us, at least me watching the hearing, listening to the hearing, around what the court appears to care about now.
Lady, let me try to explain this to you. First off, she uses all that leftist language, recentering the argument. So in essence, that when we kick Nazis out of this country, that they were treated better, post-World War II, that they were treated better than what we're doing to these Venezuelan gang members. It's so extraordinarily stupid. And yes, everyone's ear perks up when we say Nazi, except you guys have completely ruined whatever important cachet the word Nazi meant, that Nazis were people who exterminated people based on their ethnicity, at the very least. Also wanted a much bigger Germany and were going to take over Europe and all of those things and killed millions and millions of other people in their conquest for a grander Germany. You guys have called everybody Nazis for years now, for at least a decade you've been doing this, and this is the situation we're in. So I don't know that people's ears perk up anymore. It's a damn shame, and I would largely blame you guys. Also, this idea that we're treating these Venezuelan gang members worse than we treated the Nazis is so insane. Even if somebody, why would you defend, lady? First off, it's nice to see someone with a little testosterone on CNN, but lady, Why? Why would you be defending Venezuelan gang members who are here illegally doing bad things? We know that. Why would you be defending them? And even if you tell me, well, there were 238 that were sent out on the planes, and it turns out only 236 of them were gang members. 2 of them were just Venezuelans. Well, they were still here illegally, right? Nobody is making the argument that someone who was a Venezuelan who was here legally, not doing anything bad, got kicked out of the country. But this is what, as Gad Saad calls suicidal empathy, this is what it does. People will always be doing and defending the people who would gladly destroy their country, rape their wives, and kill their children. Sorry, there's not much of a better way to explain it. Don't take my word for it, though. Tom Homan, who will play Tom Homan in the movie about Tom Homan, starring Tom Homan, he's not happy about this judge either for this Nazi comment, and I thought he just laid it out perfectly.
Can I ask you about what the federal appeals judge is saying there? They said, noting that alleged Nazis were given better treatment during World War II than the Trump administration treated Venezuela.
Well, that's first of all, it's ridiculous. It's just another example of a radical judge saying something that's just disgusting. To compare anything to the Nazis, the Holocaust. We follow the law. Alien Enemies Act is clear. A law that was passed by Congress, signed by a president. We're following, unlike the last administration, we're actually following the law. What we did on those planes, we removed terrorists. MS-13 and TDAA were our designated terrorist organization. We removed terrorists. And to compare that any way whatsoever with Nazis is disgusting on every level.
Yeah, he's right. I was just thinking for a second, it's just like, I'm so sick of what they've done to the word Nazi, because then when we have people who think like the Nazis, I don't know, say the Hamas supporters rampaging through the streets of our cities, then they defend them. So the people who want to accomplish the same things that the Nazis wanted to accomplish, they're somehow considered the good guys to these people. And the people who are kicking out the drug dealers and the rapists and the murderers and the gang members, somehow they are the bad guys. It's absolutely extraordinary. Pam Bondi jumped in on this as well. They are not happy with this judge. And what's happening right now, and this is, you know this, we covered this, well, we've been covering it for a while, but I talked to lawyer Josh Hammer on Friday about it. Lower court judges right now are basically trying to reverse everything that Trump is doing, whether it's immigration and border, whether it's the gender stuff or anything else. And that is leading us to a problem where the judicial branch, it's one thing if the Supreme Court makes a decision that overrides the president, but if you are going to let every lower court judge put a temporary injunction and stop the president from doing anything, then the executive branch, in essence, cannot operate. Pam Bondi is not happy with this judge either.
This is an out of control judge, a federal judge trying to control our entire foreign policy, and he cannot do it. You know, he dragged us into court on a Saturday without any notice, and then he's continuing these hearings. He's trying to ask us about national security information, which he is absolutely not entitled to. We are appealing. We will be in court Monday again. We will win. We will prevail. There are 261 reasons why Americans are safer today, and that's because those people are now in an El Salvador prison. And we are going to follow the law, and we are going to protect America.
Yeah, it's good. She's like Homan. It's like she's direct and clear and clean. We voted, millions and millions of us voted for Donald Trump. He won every swing state. The entire machine tried to destroy him. You might argue the machine tried to kill him. We voted for him to do this. He is now doing it. And you can only describe those people as activist judges. This guy thinks that because he's a lower circuit judge, he can just override the executive branch. And again, we should have a separation of powers. You do want checks and balances. But if every time that the president of the United States does something, a random lower court judge can basically stop that from happening, then we are in complete banana republic level. We'll be just governed by an out of control judiciary. Maybe that's what the Democrats want, or at least want when there's a Republican president. Let's continue. Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. She's, I would say, slightly hysterical about this situation.
I'm concerned about how they are conducting their immigration deportation policies, seizing of American citizens without due process. While we know that many of these people may not be American citizens, they are immigrants, whether they are here illegally or through the process, we rely on our rule of law to ensure that every individual is afforded whatever the law has given them the rights to. And by handing them over without adjudication, that is extremely troubling.
Okay, let's just continue. I'm just going to let that be. Again, they always are worried about the bad guys for some reason. They're never worried about you. They're never worried about the citizens of the United States. They're never worried about law and order here. They're never worried that, I don't know, maybe your kid doesn't get killed by a Venezuelan gang member. So now let's go to New York. And Kathy Hochul, who has spent more time getting injections in her face than looking at the Constitution. She is just absolutely terrible. She has made New York State a sanctuary state. We know that New York City largely has become a sanctuary city. Some of this is now being reversed because of Trump. Here she is saying that the state police will not cooperate with ICE.
We're not going to allow this mass deportation. Where we will cooperate, and I did this even under the Biden administration, if you have a warrant, or you know someone's on a terrorism watch list or committing crimes in their home country or committing crimes here, that's a different category. And I will help you with those to protect everyone, whether newly arriving New Yorkers or whether they've lived here their entire lives. So that's real clear to me. But don't bleed over into going to schools and sensitive places. So our state policy, our state law does not allow for our state police to be involved in those situations. Now, what we have are some renegade counties in New York, because individual counties can sign a pact with ICE, and we have a lot of them, some on Long Island, some in upstate New York, where there's different political views. They are cooperating with their local police departments, but what I control is the state police, and they will not cooperate in that.
Why? Why, lady? Explain to me why. If you're the governor of New York and it's your job to protect the citizens of New York, why would you not have your state police work with the federal government so that if there are, say, Venezuelan gang members or fentanyl dealers or, I don't know, Hamas terrorists, the list goes on, why would you not have your state police working with the federal government? Why would you not do that? It's funny, you worked with the federal government when they were dumping all of those people, I would say illegally, into your state, when they were in due dereliction of their duty, when they didn't protect our border. That was bad, but you worked with them as they dumped those people on you. Why is it that you only care about non-citizens instead of ever doing the job that the people elected you for? It's something worth thinking about, Kathy Hochul. Over on CNN, let's jump back to Scott Jennings. He's debating Tiffany Cross here. And again, it's just this endless focus. They never are focused on Americans. They are only focused on gangbangers who are on fentanyl and want to rape you.
Yeah, we're talking about the Alien Enemies Act here. We're talking about using this wartime powers to attract what they call gang members. But there is still a human rights issue. And the way that these people are treated is completely inhumane. And the fact of the matter is, if these were white babies being stripped from their families, if these are white men with families, there would be a whole different level of humanity extended to them. And I don't see that happening. The way these people are treated is absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
Okay. Scott, very quickly.
I mean, obviously, there's a huge dispute between the executive branch and the judiciary over who's got what authority to do what here. I think the Trump administration has an argument to make. It's not going to be sorted out at the district or even Court of Appeals level. At some juncture, because it is a serious separation of powers issue, the Supreme Court has to step in. By the way, you invoked the word inhumane. I would just point out that I don't think Jessica Nungare or Laken Riley or any other victims of some of these illegal immigrants and gang members, they weren't treated very humanely. And I think what Trump is responding to is an outcry from the American people to solve this issue, to get the criminals out. And that's what they're doing. That's what they believe their mandate is to do. And I think there are legal arguments to be made, but you cannot deny that the American people are giving them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to exiting from the country these animals.
Yeah, he's exactly right. We're going to send him a cake and a brooch, okay? He's exactly right. First off, that girl, she's nodding there when he brings up Laken Riley and everything. She doesn't give a shit about Laken Riley or anyone else that was killed or murdered or had their house broken into or pushed into a subway or lit on fire or anything else. They don't care about those people because they never spend a moment talking about them until someone brings it up and then they nod along. Oh yeah, well, I guess we should care about Laken Riley and that was unfortunate that girl got killed, blah, 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 blah. Also, she's a complete liar, this Tiffany Cross. I don't know who she is or how she got the gig. Well, I can guess how she got the gig, but I don't really care about her other than, what is she talking about? If these were white babies this wouldn't be happening. What babies have been kicked out? Can someone do a little research on that? Have any babies been kicked out? Were there babies in the Venezuelan gangs? Give me my bottle with fentanyl and I'm going to go kill those white motherfuckers. Like, no, it's not a thing. So the implication is somehow Trump is doing this to be racist. He's being racist against Venezuelan gang members. Venezuelan gang members are not a race. Venezuelans are a nationality. Gang members are a type of person who do bad things, and they, in this case, happen to be Venezuelan. There are also Cuban gang members, there are Italian gang members, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody thinks that makes an entire nationality or race of people bad. So it's a complete confusion. I want to read to you what the War Powers Resolution is, because they keep mentioning the War Powers Resolution and they never tell you what it is. So I'm going to read this for you so you can put a pin in it and know actually what's going on. And I dare you, John Berman on CNN, instead of just talking about the War Powers Resolution, to read what it is to your audience of dullards. The War Powers Resolution is a federal law intended to check the U.S. president's power to commit the United States to an armed conflict without the consent of the U.S. Congress. The resolution was adopted in the form of a United States Congressional Joint Resolution. It provides that the president can send the U.S. armed forces into action abroad only by declaration of war, by Congress, statutory authorization, or in case of a national emergency created by an attack upon the United States, its territory or possession, or armed forces. So you might argue, and this is what the argument is about, this is why he only wants to say War Powers Act without ever telling you what it is. You can absolutely argue that after the last 4 years of millions of people being let into our cities, the mayhem it has caused, the fentanyl that has come across, all of the crime and everything else, that this is a national emergency and the president has every right to do this. The question really is, would you let a lower level judge just decide, no, the president can't do this? Would that lead us to anything like a representative democracy that I think most of us want to live in? I think the answer is fairly obvious. We'll have more on the craziness of the left, their selective application of the law and all that in just a second. But first, American financing. Look, I don't know your exact situation, but if you're like the thousands of homeowners American Financing talks to every month, you're struggling to keep up, barely making ends meet, drowning in high interest debt. And it's not your fault. Life got more expensive, inflation hit hard. And if you're still carrying credit card balances with 20% plus interest rates while your mortgage sits untouched, you're ignoring the one thing that could turn it all around, your home. And this is where American Financing can help. Would you trade 10 minutes for a shot at an average savings of $800 every single month? Because that's exactly what homeowners are doing when they call American Financing. A simple, no obligation call could change everything. They have a team of salary-based mortgage consultants, so there isn't any incentive to put you into a loan that doesn't make sense. And there are no upfront fees to find out how much you can save. Don't wait, call American Financing today and start feeling that relief. 866-889-1994. That's 866-889-1994, or visit AmericanFinancing.net/Rubin. All right, so as I've said repeatedly on the show today, they are always focused on non-citizens. They're always focused on bad guys. They're never focused on law-abiding citizens. They're never focused on the safety of you. They just, if something is right over there, they're always looking this way for something else. That's how they operate. Let's jump over to the televised mental institution known as MSNBC. There's this guy, Elie Mystal. You know this guy. He looks like half Albert Einstein, half Fat Albert. And here he is going off. He's very concerned. You know, we deported, or we're in the process of deporting this guy, Mahmoud Khalil. He's a Syrian who was on a green card, who is one of the leaders of the Columbia protests. He's allowed to say whatever he wants, but he was leading the protests, which obviously were violent, where they vandalized, where they stopped students from coming onto campus, where they occupied buildings, et cetera, et cetera. There's a difference between speech and action. Elie, here he is, and this is just Hysteria 101.
So highlight one more of these laws for us that you dive into in the book.
Yeah, so I go really hard on immigration. People who are following the tragedy and the abduction of Mahmoud Khalil have recently become aware that the 1921 Immigration and Nationality Act allows Marco Rubio to pull people's green cards by fiat, just because he says so. Well, in this book, I talk about how the 1921 Immigration and Nationality Act is one of the worst laws in the country that was made based on the testimony and science of a Nazi eugenicist. And when I say a Nazi eugenicist, I mean he's an American eugenicist that did so well, the Nazis was like, bring him over here. We're going to give him a medal at the University of Heidelberg in 1935. But in 1921, he helped Congress write the Immigration and Nationality Act, which remains one of the most racist laws in our country. That is something that we could change tomorrow that would not only free people like Mahmoud Khalil, but completely reform and reimagine our immigration process.
The new book, Bad Law, 10 popular laws that are ruining America.
All right. I don't even know how I can analyze that properly. The guy is just such an abject clown. And again, have I ever once on this show in all the years that you've been watching this not defended someone's right to free speech? You want to say horrible things about me. You want to say horrible things about America. You want to say horrible things about the Jews and blah, blah, blah. Are there things that you can't say, like direct call to violence? Yeah. But the difference between speech and action is blocking people from campuses. Action is vandalizing, et cetera, et cetera. So I know he doesn't understand that. But more importantly than any of that, can we pull a screenshot up? Because something interesting is happening here that I don't think people really understand. We're working on a screenshot. Because there you had Elie Mystal, the man who looks like half fat Albert, half Albert Einstein. And he's sitting next to Al Sharpton. Now look at these two. I think, and maybe we can have like somebody go undercover at MSNBC. It seems to me that it might be that right under the desk there's some kind of tube that they have connecting the two of them. And Mystal there is sucking the fat and life force out of the ever shrinking Al Sharpton. And it was like, maybe it was a good idea at first. Like, this guy's very untalented. He's not quite neo-racist enough. He's like, I need some of that juice, man. I need some of that Al Sharpton racism and rage and hatred of America and hatred of white people. So they created, so it's really, I mean, maybe Elon even did it. It's amazing. They have some, I'm just telling you, there's some tube under there. Just put it up one more time. He's sucking the life force out of that man. He's disappearing and the other one's getting fatter. Look, is the hair, now that guy's got the hair. The fat face, now that guy's got that. The jugular neck, now he's got it. The suit, it's all, put that on the internet. Tell him I said hi. Guy by the name of Phil Lamont, who works over on, or he's a regular over on Tim Pool's podcast. He put this up, and I thought this was quite good. Look at this. Teddy Roosevelt's ideas on immigrants and being an American, and this is back in 1907. That's a long time ago, folks. This is what Teddy Roosevelt said. In the first place, we should insist that if the immigrant who comes here in good faith becomes an American and assimilates himself to us, he shall be treated on an exact equality with everyone else. For it is an outrage to discriminate against any such man because of creed or birthplace or origin. But this is predicated upon the person's becoming in every facet an American, and nothing but an American. There can be no divided allegiance here. Any man who says he is an American, but something else also, isn't an American at all. We have room for but one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the American people. Isn't it interesting that 120 years ago, roughly, a politician could get up there and say that? Now, interestingly, that is the type of thing that Donald Trump says, and Donald Trump did just sign an executive order that English is the official language of the United States. I want to say, look, I live here in Miami, as I talk about all the time. I'm around a lot of Cubans, I'm around a lot of Venezuelans. I hear Spanish here all the time. It's not that you can't come to this country and keep your language when you're in your home, and even when you're at restaurants and whatever, and you can keep your traditions and your clothes and your music and your food, and we love that. That's the idea of the melting pot. But there is something to be said about having a national language. You come to America, if you don't fold in, if you don't say, oh, the American thing is really special and I should learn its language and I should respect its laws and its culture and everything else, well, then how does that work over time? So, okay, so you have one generation of people who don't speak the same language. So if you don't speak the same language as your neighbor, well, okay, maybe that can work for a generation, and occasionally you say hi on the show, hi, and whatever, okay, fine. But how does that work for the next generation? What do you have that holds you together? And I think that that's what we're learning in the United States. So language is basically the easiest one, right? Like, you should learn English if you come to America, regardless of where you came from, whether you came from Asia or Eastern Europe or South America. You should, and you should have allegiance to this country. And when we show you all of these videos, or anything that I've showed you so far, that they're always focused on the other people, not us, where is your allegiance? Where is the allegiance of Ilhan Omar? Where is the allegiance of Rashida Tlaib? Where's the allegiance of Elie Mystal and all of these people that are upset that we're getting terrorists out of the country and people who are sympathetic to terrorists and gang members and everything else? Where is your allegiance? I think Teddy Roosevelt would have a pretty clean answer on that. Let's go back for a second. Let's get into the time machine. We were just in 1907 a moment ago. Let's go to 2017. This is Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed. I think we've shown you this video once or twice before. He's from the UAE, right? UAE, I think. And here he is warning Europe and really the United States about what could happen if you don't sort of protect your culture, if you just bring in people who are kind of radical, what might happen?
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
So 2017, you've got a sheik from the UAE saying, hey, Europe, your political correctness thing, when you won't defend your own culture, and oh, those people, they were gang raping girls, but they're brown and Pakistani. We should probably cover that up, otherwise we'll seem racist, or what you see as it pertains to our border here, or what that ridiculous woman, Tiffany Cross, said about if these were white babies, even though there's no brown babies being kicked out of the country. You know what happens over time? Over time, you will let in a whole bunch of bad people. And then you'll have Tesla stations burning down. And you'll have campuses being occupied. And then, I don't know, probably gets worse than that, right? But we were warned. We were warned. And now we're trying to clean it up. And the very people who are trying to clean it up are being called racists and Nazis and everything else. Here is this lunatic Congressman Jamie Raskin. This guy is just absolutely awful. And here he is going after Elon Musk. Elon Musk, the man who saved the astronauts last week. Elon Musk, the man who's trying to make life interplanetary. Elon Musk, who's working for free over at the government so that they stop wasting your money. You know, real bad dude. Here he is. And if you want to find a sort of bigoted attack on Elon, I think this is pretty much it.
They want to sweep in Panama. They want to bring in Greenland. They want to bring in Canada, where Elon Musk incidentally was a citizen after he left his native apartheid South Africa, and it shows. Why? Because they believe that this new consortium will require a new constitution that would allow Elon Musk to run for president. My friends, we've got to defend America and the Constitution against these people.
Good God. I know we can't kick out citizens, but if we could, that guy would be on my list. First off, you can see the connection. So what they always want to do with Elon now is he somehow came from apartheid South Africa. That implies that he was for apartheid, thus racist. Okay, so that's just complete nonsense. I've never heard Elon say anything racist, period. But did you catch what he was really doing there? That the reason that Trump is floating this idea of Canada as the 51st state is so that Elon can become president of the United States. That is so mind-numbingly dumb and off the charts ridiculous that I don't know what to say about it. I really don't know what to say about it. I don't want to drop the F-bomb today. I don't want to do it. My knee hurts. I don't want to start dropping F-bombs, get the blood pressure going, so I'm not going to do it. But try to imagine the stupidity here. Yes, Trump and Elon got together. They were like, you know what? When I'm done, I've only got 4 years here. Sure, JD's been an absolute all-star. I don't know, there's Trump Jr. We got a pretty thick bench of people here. There's a lot of younger conservatives that could be good to take this thing over. But Elon, with all the things that you want to do, I don't know, go to Mars, maybe go to Saturn, see if we can get out of the solar system altogether. I'm going to take over Canada, make it a state so that you can use your Canadian citizenship to become president of the United States. It's so profoundly idiotic. Uh-oh, the leg's starting to hurt. That we should move on to the next clip, which is of another wizard. This is Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and he's concerned that Elon's killing people.
And I have talked to those people and talked to them directly, and people honestly are going to lose their lives because of decisions that Elon Musk is making that he just doesn't understand the impact of, or he's just a cruel individual.
or he doesn't care. We don't know. I'll be less generous than you are.
Oh, yes, and you really care, Jen Psaki. You didn't seem to care. Her face is falling off her skull because she knows she's a lying fraud. You didn't seem to care when you were working for a dementia patient. Oh, and how do I know he was a dementia patient? Because Jake Tapper, another guy who was running cover for it, he's got a book coming out about it. You didn't care when you were lying to the American people about your boss's incapacity. You didn't care about that. But now somehow Elon Musk is going to kill people simply because he's looking into government fraud. And this is what they're doing. They're ramping everything up, right? They have taken the avatar that was Trump for 10 years. Everything evil was projected onto Trump. They've realized that didn't work. How do we know it didn't work? Well, he's the president again. And now they have their new boogeyman. And their new boogeyman is Elon Musk. And unfortunately, I would say in this case, Elon Musk, sort of like Donald Trump, but in some sense on steroids. Donald Trump had properties all over the United States, hotels mostly, that had big Trump logos that you could go protest. Elon has Tesla showrooms and charging stations. How many Tesla superchargers are there? I mean, there's got to be hundreds, if not thousands, between showrooms and charging stations and everything else. And they are sending the foot soldiers. It's the rebranded Antifa Hamas people, the gender queer terrorists, whatever you want to call them. Here's a few of them having a Tesla dance party. I wonder how afraid we should be of these people. All right, so why am I showing you that? That wasn't the worst. We could have showed you someone rubbing their ass on a Model X. We could have showed you someone puking on a Model Y, but we didn't. And why didn't we? Because I want to show you that I'm for those people protesting. You losers, you asexual weirdos that should have jobs and families and maybe go to the gym or just get out there. If that's what you want to do, if that's how you want to spend your day, protesting the man that is trying to make life interplanetary, then go for it. That's a good use of free speech. Well, I can't say it's a good use of free speech, but it's a use of free speech that I will defend. I will not defend the people, etching swastikas into the car and blowing up the stations. We did a little fact checking on it. There are 2,500 Tesla superchargers throughout the country. Think how incredible this is. The Tesla, what year did the Tesla come out? Tesla came out, probably about 10 years ago now. And what Elon did, because it's an electric car and you couldn't only charge at home, they had to make sure you would be able to drive across the country. How many? What year? 2008. So the Tesla, wow, that's crazy. It's already 17 years old. That's something else. But in any event, they then put these charging stations all over the country. So you literally, and now you can do it by auto drive. You could auto drive yourself. You have to sit in the front with your hands on the wheel, but you can auto drive yourself across the country and it'll stop when it needs to get charged. It's a magnificent, elegant piece of machinery. And it wasn't just the car they had to create. They had to create all of these Tesla charging stations all over the country. It's absolutely incredible. This is the guy they hate the most. And it's funny, I love showing you those videos of Trump from the 80s where he's on Donahue or he's on Oprah, and then you see that he actually has been remarkably consistent for decades. We just found this one yesterday. This is Elon in 2011. And this is really interesting because what you're going to see is that he's being remarkably consistent to how he is today, although he sounds an awful like a libertarian, even though he's been a Democrat until just this last year or so. Take a look.
I think in general, it's tough for government to do things efficiently. So I'm generally a proponent of smaller government, not bigger government, just because government as a system is not an efficient system. So you want to minimize the government participation in the economy. That doesn't mean getting rid of it, but it's just saying you have to think really carefully before government does something versus free enterprise does something. Free enterprise is always going to be more efficient. So now there are things like basic physics research and obviously, I think we'd rather have a government army than a private army, and I think probably a government justice system than a private justice system. There's sort of things that the government should do, and also kind of doing things like the Hubble and the Mars rovers. Something like the Hubble is a small amount of good for everyone. It's like, whoa, we learned more about the universe, got some really cool pictures, and that's of value to all of America and all of humanity, really. But it's hard to say, like, who's going to pay for it if you try to raise private funds for it. Yeah. I mean, you might be able to get it, but it's harder.
Isn't that the same guy? 14 years later, it's the same guy. Now, interestingly, he was a Democrat most of those years, but that really tells you about how the Democrats went crazy. Even though the Democrats have always been, let's say, a little more big government than the Republicans, the Democrats went fully all in on all of the big government, giant USAID, et cetera, programs. The Republicans were a little bit better. I would say now, because of Elon's involvement and DOGE, the Republicans are much more in line with what Elon was laying out 14 years ago. Free enterprise is always more efficient. Yeah, it is. You know why? Competition. There's competition. I own a shoe store. I own a shoe store. Oh, I better lower my prices or make better shoes. Uh-oh, that guy lowered his prices and made better shoes. I'm going to lower my prices and make my better shoes. And then another shoe guy came in, and then they're all competing, and then suddenly the quality goes up, the price goes down. It's not rocket science, even though he's basically a rocket scientist. He also makes the point that you could have the government doing things like pure physics. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago on the show. I'm not even against, even though I'm not a big government guy, a slim, trim government that wants to put some money towards the pure pursuit of science, which is in essence the pure pursuit of truth. I could get on board with that. He also makes a point. The justice system probably should be public, not private. The army should probably be public, not private. So this is not like ANCAP, Mad Max crazy stuff that he was laying out then. And it's, once again, just like Trump on Oprah, when Oprah in 1986 wanted Donald J. Trump to run for president, the guy has been remarkably consistent. We'll have more on some of the things he's doing in just a second, but first, morning kick. Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made and I was shocked. He's in his 80s and still kicking butt and working out and staying active. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by simply making one change. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Rubin or by clicking the link in the video below. It'll change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/Rubin and click on the link in the description below to watch the video now. You won't believe how simple it is. Chuck Norris discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch this method by clicking the link in the description box below or click chuckdefense.com/Rubin. All right, so Elon Musk, a man who came here from apartheid South Africa, who secretly is working with Donald Trump so that we can annex Canada so he can use his Canadian citizenship to become president of the United States, also uncovered $330 million in SBA loans to children.
Well, a clear case of fraud was with the Small Business Administration, where they were handing out loans, $330 million worth of loans to people under the age of 11. I think the youngest, Kelly, was a 9-month-old who got a $100,000 loan. That's a very precocious baby we're talking about here.
That's it. Go get the kids. I want Justin and Luke in this room right now. We're going to fill out some paperwork, and I'm getting those kids to get on the government dole. I want some of that SBA money. I don't know how you have to do it. I don't know if they have to sign, or we'll give them a crayon, or we're all better at Play-Doh right now. We're making some really amazing things. But do you realize how insane this is? This is the man that they hate. $300 million of small business loans that went to children, including a 9-month-old. Maybe that's why the guy has 14 kids. He's like, let me cash in on this government cheese. It's just absolutely insane, and it continues. Here's Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins just cutting more obscene fraud.
Thank you. We just had a wonderful cabinet meeting, all aligned on certainly the effort to realign the government. But even at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, we've canceled a $300,000 contract educating on food justice for queer and transgender farmers in San Francisco. A similar contract we canceled in New York, again educating transgender and queer farmers on food justice and food equality. I'm not even sure what that means, but apparently the last administration wanted to put our taxpayer dollars towards that. We canceled a $600,000 contract out of Louisiana that was studying the menstrual cycles of transgender men, a $600,000 contract. We canceled another contract out of a university in the middle of the country that focused on getting more diversity, equity, and inclusion into our pest management industry. Again, these are nonsensical. It makes zero sense to use taxpayer dollars to fund these. I know these are just a few examples of the hundreds and hundreds that we have found.
Queer and trans farmers. Not Transformers. Although I always thought Starscream was a little queer. Megatron, he was so whiny. Megatron, bah. Queer and trans farmers. That's what we're sending money to. And because they're exposing it, they're being called Nazis and bigots and the rest of it. It's so, do you care when you get your eggs? I made eggs this morning. Made two beautiful, it's basically sunny side up, but I put the pan on top so you're gonna get a little bit of something over the top. So it's not just pure goo, right? So you could call it medium over medium. That's what I like. I frankly don't care if my farmer, who's got the chickens and the coop and the whole thing, if he's straight or gay, male or female. I don't care what his genitals are. I don't care if he's a dude with boobs and a wang. And it's like, are you able to provide the chicken feed and make sure that the chickens can get into the coop at night and not be killed by the raccoons so that I can eat an egg? But you don't deserve extra money just because you have boobs and a dong. And that's our show for today. No, just kidding. Okay, so that's one thing. Trans farmers, wonderful. Here's Lee Zeldin, who's now the head of the EPA. He's also cutting more nonsense, and you're going to really dig this one.
EPA has now canceled over $22 billion worth of contracts. $2 billion going to this NGO that Stacey Abrams was tied to. They received only $100 in 2023. And then the Biden administration gave them $2 billion. The director of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund saw his former employer get $5 billion. So $20 billion went to just 8 NGOs, and they're all pass-throughs. And then they were giving it to other entities, many of them were pass-throughs. And what you have is all these extra middlemen, they're taking their cut. And the taxpayer ends up getting screwed. They're losing out on all this hard-earned money. They can't afford to have the federal government waste.
So billions and billions of dollars are being laundered. They take your money, it goes all the way up top, and then it goes through all of these systems, and no one ever does anything positive with the money. I think Stacey Abrams was mentioned there. She got $2 billion for some. Now there's Stacey Abrams, and it's like, man, if you had $2 billion and you're involved in a giant money laundering operation, how do you not, come on, put that picture back. How do you not, you're not happy about this one? You know where I'm going with this. It's like, lady, orthodontics, 20 grand. 20 grand, we're gonna close that giant gap. You're laundering all of that money and it didn't cross your mind at any point to find an orthodontist. I think she lives in Atlanta. There's gotta be plenty of orthodontists there. It's like, if you're gonna launder the money, I'm not defending the laundering the money, but if you're gonna launder the money, at least close the gap. Close the gap. Scott Bessent, who's doing a bang-up job with the economy right now, and Howard Lutnick also. So these are competent people who are. Bessent happens to be gay, but nobody cares. That's the last time I'm going to mention on the show. He's qualified for the gig. Lutnick straight. He's also qualified for the gig, and he had to be particularly qualified because he's a straight white man. Here they are talking about how they're going to privatize more of the economy, and we're going to look into the IRS, and there's just some good stuff happening.
We are under your direction. We're reprivatizing the economy. We're bringing down government spending. We're bringing down excess employment in the government sector. On the other side, we're going to re-leverage the banking system. We're going to have all the new manufacturing jobs, so everyone who's laid off from the government will have an opportunity to go into the private sector, and that is going to lead to disinflation. Inflation is under control. We're going to get the affordability crisis fixed.
And what balance and what fair trade finally is going to take care of America. It's going to launch the External Revenue Service to start to build the power and prestige of America back. And I'm honored to be helping you on that course.
It's an interesting term, right? The External Revenue Service. We're going to take in a lot of money from the outside, and that's going to keep our taxes low, and I think getting a lot lower. It's going to be a lot of money, and the external will take care of the internal to a large extent. So I think it's going to be a beautiful transformation.
All right, hold on. We'll get to that in a second. Yes, it's all very important. We're going to fix the economy. But back to Stacey Abrams for just a second. I said 20 grand, 20, 30 grand for braces. I was way off. Braces, we just checked, only cost 3 to 7 grand. And the rest of her teeth basically seem okay. So I think you're looking at about a $2,500 operation to close that gap. Lady, you got $2 billion. You didn't even need to take the laundered money to do that. I am sure Stacey Abrams somewhere, or you know somebody who could lend you $2,000 so that you don't have to steal from the government to close that freak, or just get her an extra tooth. Is that done? Do they do that? You had one centered tooth. I'm just saying, good orthodontics. It's a lifetime, for $3,000, lady, it's a lifetime of smiles and happiness. Anyway, as per the clip that we just showed you, yeah, they're just trying to privatize things. They're trying to make trade deals fair. Which then would stop inflation, and we would all have more money, and the economy would be chugging along. And here's Donald Trump on some of the investment we're getting in the United States right now. The UAE has pledged $1.4 trillion. Saudi Arabia, $600 billion. Hyundai, $20 billion. Apple, $500 billion. Nvidia, over $100 billion. SoftBank, OpenAI, Oracle, $100 billion. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, $100 billion. Johnson & Johnson, $55 billion. I don't have to read all of it. You can see it right there. Like, companies are coming back to the United States. They're saying we can manufacture here. We can build here. We can produce here because we're creating the economic conditions that Scott Bessent and Howard Lutnick just laid out so that they can compete in the worldwide marketplace, which is something we have not been able to do. I would bet you that because of Trump's economic policies, even the price of orthodontics is going to go down for one. You know what? I'm going to forget it. Stacey Abrams, you've been laundering all this money. It's fine. You don't have to be thrown in jail. I will pay for your orthodontics. I will pay. No, I'm not paying for orthodontics. I will pay for the one tooth. If you want to go for the one tooth thing, preferably a golden tooth, I will pay to get one gold tooth just jammed right up in there. And it would be appropriate. You laundered $2 billion and then you just get one golden tooth just jammed right up in your face. I'm paying for it. That's it. I pay for all your health care. Why not for Stacey Abrams? Kash Patel, new director of the FBI, also just a professional. Like, these are people who are qualified to do their jobs. You're not going to believe this. We're going to take these people, the FBI agents who sit in DC basically watching porn all day. We're going to send them out in the field to do actual work.
Well, Trey, this is my first media appearance since taking the job, and I'm glad that it's on your wonderful show. And what I want to do is highlight for the American public that there's 38,000 employees at the FBI. If you take the national capital region, as the folks around Washington, D.C. call it, the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., we have 11,000 employees for the FBI in that 50-mile radius, give or take. And a third of the crime does not happen in this region. A large portion of one of my priorities, fighting violent crime, crushing narco traffickers, stopping fentanyl overdoses, is happening in any town USA across this country. And they need resources in the form not just of money, but manpower. So we're going to reorient our assets in Washington. We're going to look at it strategically, as we've been doing the last month, and send our agents and analysts and SOS operatives into the field to take on this violent crime explosion that has occurred over these last 4 or 5 years.
All right, hold on. Once again, we'll get to that in a second, but throw up the Stacey Abrams picture again, because a theory just came out of the studio here. I'm not going to say who said it, but somebody, it wasn't me that thought of this, but this is a theory, and we're hypothesizing. That's what we're doing. Is it possible that she wants the gap so that she doesn't have to chew food? She can just toss it in there like a big Philly cheesesteak. Boom, just gets stuffed in. Anyway, as for Kash Patel, yes, we're going to get these guys. We've got FBI agents. I always tell you, every time I go to DC, you just see giant buildings. Nobody's there. Who's working? We're finding out who's working and who's not working. But also stop centralizing all of these agents in DC. Imagine if we took our FBI agents, imagine if we took our qualified government employees and we sent them throughout the country, particularly to blue states, which refuse, much like Kathy Hochul talked about right there, refuse to work with ICE, et cetera. Imagine if we sent qualified agents to deal with some of the crime and mayhem and everything else. That might fix things too. So now we've focused for the last half hour mostly on the orthodontics of Stacey Abrams, but also on government efficiency. And now let's jump over to the future of the Democrats, because, it's this crazy clown car of people who have to out-crazy themselves all the time. AOC, I've been saying for a couple of weeks, Jasmine Crockett with her crazy eyelashes, she's been kind of like getting AOC out of the way. Now AOC is on her socialist bandwagon tour with Bernie Sanders, and she's ready to go full in on the crazy. Here's a bit of her speech at her socialist communist rally, whatever.
Need to be taxed taxing the rich on the floor of the United States Congress. We need to be establishing guaranteed health care on the floor of the United States Congress, not erasing American history on the floor of the United States Congress. We need to be passing a living wage on the floor of the United States Congress. It's not just about Republicans. We need a Democratic Party that fights harder for us too.
Okay, the fake accent, you get it. The anger, she's just a LARPing actress. So maybe she will be the future of the Democrats. Of course, she started there. Basically, we have to tax these people. It's this tax the rich thing. I think we have a chart on that. Do we just pull that up? Do the rich pay their fair share? This is federal income taxes and adjusted gross income earned in 2018. We just pulled this up before the show. But yes, the rich, so that top 1%, if you make over $540K per year, you're in the top 1%, you pay 40% of taxes. So when they say their fair share, you're in the top 1%, you're paying 40% of the taxes. So what would, and this is why they never lay out the numbers, because they just want bumper sticker slogans. What would be the fair share of that 1%? Now, first off, you're in that 1%. So let's say you make $550,000 a year, okay? $550,000 a year. You're taxed by the federal government at about 35, 38%, something like that. Now you got about $200,000, $250,000, something around there, or maybe even a little bit more than that. You got $280,000. The point is, okay, now you got $280,000. Well, you have a home, you got a mortgage, you got car payments, you got to send your kids to school, blah, blah, blah. These people are not insanely wealthy. Now that's just somebody at $540,000, but most Americans would love to earn $540,000. The point is, the fair share argument is complete nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And really, to the backdrop of everything else that we've been talking about for months now, as we're getting all of this ridiculous money out of the government, as the trans farmers are losing their funding, we should be focused on that the government doesn't need more of your money. So think it's the juxtaposition, I guess, of these two things. On one hand, we have a party that's trying to eliminate waste and make sense of what government's doing. And then you have this hysterical LARPing communist on stage with a millionaire socialist, Bernie Sanders, saying, no, 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 if we just had more of their money. And the fact that these two things are happening at the exact same time is really, really incredible. Objectively, if you were looking at it, objectively as I could possibly be right now, you know my opinions on everything. If you want more competence in government, or you want more services out of government, first, you would deal with the waste. So you'd still be for what Elon is doing. But no, he's from apartheid South Africa, and he wants to move to Canada to become the American president. Timu Obama, you know this guy, Hakeem Jeffries, he's basically conceding ground and saying that AOC is the head of the Democrat crazy clown car.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. Rep. AOC drew some large crowds on the trail this past week, stumping out west with Senator Sanders. Is it wise to elevate her as a party messenger? And to what extent are you concerned that she could become a prominent boogeyman for the GOP ahead of 2026?
She's already a prominent member of the House Democratic Caucus, and I expect that will continue.
Yes, that's right, because you people never know when to say too far left is too far. So congratulations. I'm telling you, Timu Obama, that is that guy. If you ever saw the movie Multiplicity with Michael Keaton, remember that movie where he clones himself and then the clones keep cloning themselves, but each generation starts getting dumber and dumber and dumber? That's Obama. That's Obama like 7 generations in, and that's what you're left with. This just utter, he doesn't even smile like Obama. At least, for all the horrible things you can say about Obama, and you can say plenty of them, and I regret ever voting for the guy, at least it was like there was a nice smile there. There was a sense of humor there, something like that. This guy's just nothing. He's 8th generation of the degradation of the clone Obama. But keep going, Democrats. Go with AOC, go with this clown car of ridiculousness. And you know what? We'll get more of this. Check this out from Charlie Kirk. Americans are voting with their feet, fleeing blue state tyranny for better run red states. Projected 2030 congressional reappointments. Minnesota's going to lose a seat. Cali's going to lose 4. They've already lost a couple. Wisconsin will lose. Illinois will lose. New York's going to lose 2. Pennsylvania will lose. Who's going to gain? Arizona, Texas, Florida. Texas and Florida are going to gain 4 each. Fantastic. And North Carolina. Some estimates that blue states could lose as many as 12 congressional seats. We can leave the rest for now. The point is, more and more people are waking up. So I get it. They will ramp up the rhetoric. They will ramp up the lies. They will ramp up the class warfare. They'll ramp up that guy's a Nazi and he's a racist and everything else. And at the end, you will get nominee AOC, or nominee Jasmine Crockett, or perhaps nominee Stephen A. Smith?
Do I believe that if I committed myself to knowing politics the way you and others know it, do I believe I could win a Democratic nomination? Hell yes. Particularly the state of affairs that exists, I think it would be a cakewalk. I think I'd take them all out. I really, really believe that. I really think I could take them. And maybe in 3 years from now, I'll feel a bit differently. I just can't imagine that's not going to happen. I'm not a politician. I'm not knowledgeable enough about all the intricacies that come along with politics.
Trump wasn't a politician either.
Like yourself. So yeah, I watch people like yourself and others on both sides of the aisle. I read, I pay attention, but I'm no aficionado. But it's just so bad on the left right now. And I tell you, I do believe that I'd be a formidable candidate because I know how to debate. I would look forward to going up against folks on the right and the left. And I would be about common sense. And I would be about, you know what? We're not going to sit up there and look at, I don't care if it's Trump, I don't care if it's Vice President Vance, I don't care if it's Rubio, I don't care if it's Hegseth, I don't care who the hell it is, I don't care if it's Megyn Kelly. Damn it, if you're right, you're right. What's the crime in saying, that's a good point? I got to think about that. You got a good point.
That would be
there.
so disarming.
I would demand that you do the same in return if we're going up against.
So your move, Democrats. Now, Stephen A. Did just sign a $100 million deal with ESPN, so I have a feeling he has better things to do than run for president of the United States. But everything he said there is right. You guys are all insane. You never know when to concede a point. And you know, he's being, you can either argue he's sort of bragging or being humble in some sense, or it's like a humble brag when he's like, well, I'm not a career politician and I'm not an aficionado of these things. It's like he knows more. You think AOC is an aficionado of politics? Do you think any of these people are, does Jasmine Crockett strike you as you know, the Ben Franklin of politics? Like, obviously not. So the point is that this is what they've been left with. And is it possible? I would prefer, you know, my preference, I would prefer that Stephen A. continue to be a voice of reason and ultimately maybe vote for Republicans, because why not support JD if it's going to be JD or the broad tent right now that's doing so many of the things that he seems to agree with, because he sat in this very studio and I couldn't get him to say much of what he doesn't like about the Republicans. But the point is, he's right. And would he be a far better candidate? Would Bill Maher be a far better candidate? Would I be a far better candidate? Would Joe Rogan be a far better candidate? People who are all Dems, some of Bill still is a Dem. Would any of these people be far better than what the Democrats are offering? The answer is obviously yes. But nothing's going to stop them on the crazy train, and they will blow up Tesla stations, and they will demand more money from you on their quest to, I don't know, upend the entire American order. That's an odd ending to the show. Can we see what's her name's teeth again? Stacey Abrams' teeth. Can we just end on this? Can you put in like can we put in like the music from, no, we can't put in some zombie scary music or anything. Anyway, look at that. And just which way, America, which way? Postgame show at rubinreport.locals.com in 30 seconds.